Hi, James Whiffen here for Plugin Everything, and today we're going to be talking about how we can animate physics via expressions. If you're anything like me, I can't animate for peanuts, and so expressions really help me with that, especially physical-based expressions such as bounce, elastic, etc. So in this example, I've just got a ball that drops and it's got its default linear ease, which is boring, so I just select those and apply the bounce expression for Ease and Wizz. This is a free script from aescripts.com with the original expressions, I believe based on Penna's easing expressions, which you can find more about here at robertpenna.com/easing. So we simply select keyframe, apply bounce out, and bam, there we go, we've got our ball bouncing. The great thing about this is that just say we wanted to drop the ball from a little bit higher, we can simply increase the height of the drop and it updates automatically, which is great. Very easy to iterate. So that was very easy. Let's try a more complex example. We're going to animate some shapes using elastic instead of bounce. I'm just going to create a new solid and add an ellipse to that and just scale it down to 90%, then change its opacity to very low. This is just a guide for me because I want to draw essentially a bit of rope that's been stretched all the way back. So 2 points and then a vertex in the middle. We drag that all the way down, and I'm going to draw this at its starting point where it's been stretched back as far as it can go. And the reason I have the circle is because I want it to emulate the look of a circle at this stage. So we go content, shape, path, keyframe that. Then I'm going to come to 4 seconds, and this path here, I want it to essentially be at its resting state. At the start it's been stretched, and then once it's stopped wobbling, comes back to this resting state. The issue I currently have is that the handles are too long at the end, and so while the animation looks good at the start, at the end these handles shouldn't be as long. So if we just come to the second keyframe, we can just make these shorter, and then we'll get a more natural looking animation towards the end. We want to use the elastic expression, which overshoots the end of your animation and shows a bit more. So what we need to do is then come to say 8 seconds and draw our overshoot animation, which is very easy. It's essentially the same as the first keyframe, but just all the way at the other end rather. That's kind of what we would expect if you slung a slingshot and then it went all the way up here and then it would come back to its resting place. So I'm pretty happy with this animation. If we were to apply, say, expo in and out or expo out to this, it would say, looks like you have a mask path selected, so to apply Ease and Wizz, you need to use the Curvaceous checkbox. And that's because instead of just numbers, we're actually interpolating between paths, and that's going to work. That's now applied the expo out. However, Curvaceous doesn't work for elastic or back, and that's because it has that overshoot, and it doesn't know that if you've supplied it or not. We have supplied it here, the overshoot, but it doesn't know that. So we need to cheat this a little bit. We need to grab comp 1. Actually, before I do that, I just alt click that and remove that expression. I just want the linear ease. Drag comp 1 into a new comp, go time remapping, then come to our resting point, set a keyframe, delete the last keyframe, and now we don't need this Curvaceous because now we are dealing with number data here instead of paths. And we go remove a Curvaceous, elastic out. Now if we play that back, it's not going to look very good. And the reason for that is if we actually display this, if we visualize what's going on here, we can see it's too extreme. The amplitude is way too high. So to set this up, I'm just going to add 2 sliders. The first one's going to be period and the second one's going to be amplitude. And then if we go into the expression itself, you can see we've got the period here, which is 0.81. I believe that's usually a value between 0 and 1, and that's the time distance between the keyframes, and the amplitude is how far it's going to shoot. So if we have these both set to 0, I don't know what's going to happen actually. Okay, it's just the default animation. Make the period back to 0.81, and we can again visualize these, but the amplitude is still 0. Let's bump that up to say 2. So there we have our wobbling animation. It's a little bit boring though, so we might want to increase the amplitude. And if we go too high, we'll see we get this clipping where it's gone past 8 seconds. Remember, we don't have any animation past 8 seconds, so it's just going to be blank there. So we can't go too high. Well, you can if you want. You just got to make sure you've got the overshoot animation for it to display. I don't want it to be that high. I'm going to try a value of 6. And the great thing about this is this updates. If we make a change, we can see that. Same with the period, but I think the value of 0.81 suits it. I think this is looking pretty good, but I want it to sort of shoot out at the start quicker. And what we can do to do that is, instead of having this resting point at exactly the middle, we can speed up the start and then have the end slower. But now that we've changed the resting spot to be 3 seconds 15 frames, we need to update that here. Otherwise, the resting spot is going to be, not halfway. So we just click on this and make this 3:15. So now it's a bit bouncier at the start. Another thing we'll want to do is probably turn this into a guide layer so that we can't see it. Also, I believe the stroke looks better on this animation using a round cap rather than a butt cap. That's looking pretty good. I still think the handles at the resting spot are too long, and so it's making it look a little weird. So I'm just going to shorten those. I think that looks a lot better. In the final result that I've got, I've added a plugin that coincidentally Plugin Everything makes called Path Visualizer to display the handles and the vertices. And then I've just animated a very quick pen tool animation to show that the pen tool is what's pulling back the elastic and loosening it. And then I simply just looped it so that it can play forever. So make sure you check out plugineverything.com. We've got heaps of cool plugins. Some of them are free, most of them aren't, but that's how we can afford to sustain ourselves. So thanks for watching, and I hope you create something cool with expressions.